Welcome to the ITFreeTraining video on Enhanced Session Mode in Hyper-V. Enhanced Session Mode allows a virtual machine running in Hyper-V to access resources on the local computer. For example, you are now able to access devices like USB flash drives, making it easier to transfer files from the local computer to the virtual machine. Previously in Hyper-V, the administrator using the virtual machine connection window could use mouse, keyboard, and limited copy-paste functionality. To get additional resources, the administrator would use a remote desktop connection to access the virtual machine. However, this requires both the virtual machine and the administrator computer to be connected to the same network. Enhanced Session Mode essentially allows the virtual machine to access additional resources on the local administrator's computer that previously were not available. Let's consider a virtual machine. An administrator using the host computer running Hyper-V or a remote computer will want devices on the local computer available to the virtual machine. The administrator will access the virtual machine through the virtual machine connection window. When Enhanced Session Mode is enabled, this gives the virtual machine access to the following: local hard disks on the server or the administrator's computer, USB devices like USB flash drives, local printers, audio devices allowing the virtual machine to play sound previously not available, clipboard access between the virtual machine and the local computer. Previously, there was only limited access to the clipboard, access to smartcards, access to plug-and-play devices. Lastly, the ability to access display configuration. This allows the administrator, when accessing the virtual machine, to decide the resolution they want to use. In order to use this, Enhanced Session Mode uses the VMBus. The VMBus is used by Hyper-V for high-speed communication between the virtual machines. The VMBus is installed when you install Hyper-V integration services on the virtual machine. This essentially means that it does not require any additional networking or other services to be installed. All you need to do is install integration services and make sure that Enhanced Session Mode is enabled. In order to start using Enhanced Session Mode, you need to meet a few requirements. For the host and the client, you need to be running Windows Server 2012 R2 or Windows 8.1. At this stage, there is no support for alternate operating systems like Linux. This, unfortunately, limits the virtual machines you can run to Windows Server 2012 R2 and Windows 8.1. If you are running Hyper-V on Windows 8.1, Enhanced Session Mode will be enabled by default. If you are running Hyper-V on Windows Server 2012 R2, Enhanced Session Mode will be disabled by default and will need to be enabled before you can start using it. I will now change to my computer running Windows 8.1 to have a look at how you would use Enhanced Session Mode with Hyper-V. In this demonstration, I will use Windows 8.1 to connect to a Windows Server 2012 R2 computer. I have done it this way as this is the most likely way that most administrators will perform day-to-day activities using Hyper-V. To start with, I will open the Hyper-V Manager by right-clicking the Start menu and then selecting the option Search. From the Search dialog, I will enter in Hyper and then select Hyper-V Manager when it appears. Once Hyper-V Manager has opened, the next step is to right-click Hyper-V Manager and then select the option Connect to Server. Next, I need to enter in the computer that I want to connect to, which in this case is my server running Windows Server 2012 R2 with the Hyper-V role installed and configured. Once connected, the next step is to enable Enhanced Session Mode. To do this, I will select the option on the right-hand side, Hyper-V Settings. From Hyper-V Settings, select the section Enhanced Session Mode Policy. To enable, it is as simple as ticking the option Allow Enhanced Session Mode. On Windows Server 2012 R2, this is not ticked by default. On Windows 8.1, this will be ticked by default. The section that I will look at is Enhanced Session Mode that is found under the User Settings. This is the option Use Enhanced Session Mode. This will mean that Enhanced Session Mode will be used automatically when connecting to a virtual machine. In a moment, we'll see how this works. I will now press OK and save the settings that I just configured. This is the server settings configuration, but a setting also needs to be configured on the virtual machine. To do this, I will right-click the virtual machine and select the option Settings. Once the settings have opened, I next need to select Integration Services. Enhanced Session Mode requires that Guest Services be ticked. If this is not ticked, it will not work, regardless of what the Hyper-V server settings are configured to. Once I press OK, the setting will be saved. In some cases, the virtual machine may need to be restarted in order for the guest services to start working. If you find the Enhanced Session Mode will not work, try rebooting the virtual machine. If I now right-click the virtual machine and select Connect, this will open the virtual machine connection window. You will notice that you will get a window appearing that previously did not appear. This is the settings for Enhanced Session Mode. Before the window is opened to control the virtual machine, notice that I can configure the resolution that I can use to connect to the virtual machine. Previously, to change the resolution on a virtual machine, you would have needed to change the desktop resolution that virtual machine was using. If I select the option at the bottom, Show Options, this will show additional options that are available. You will also notice the tick box, Save My Settings for future connections to this virtual machine. If you want to make sure that the same settings are used next time you connect to the virtual machine, make sure that you tick this tick box. The next set of options that are available are under the tab Local Resources. At the top is the button for audio settings. If I press the Settings button, this will show the settings that are being used for playback and recording. This allows you to configure if you want audio on the local or remote computer. In the case of the recording, a virtual machine is not able to record audio, so being able to use a local device to record audio allows you to get around this limitation. At the bottom are Local Device. If you want to use local printers on the virtual machine, all you need to do is make sure the Printers tick box is ticked. If you want to use the clipboard function, make sure this is ticked. The clipboard option in Enhanced Session Mode gives you full access to the clipboard functions, where before you only had limited access to the clipboard when accessing a virtual machine. If I press the More button, this will give me access to the rest of the options. You will notice that smartcards are enabled by default. If I expand the Drives section, you will notice that you can select which local drives you want to be available on the virtual machine. You are free to choose which drives you want, but notice that if I select all the drives, this includes the last option, drives that I plug in later. This is useful as it will mean devices like USB flash drives that are plugged into the computer later on are automatically available to the virtual machine. Below this is the tick box, Other Supported Plug-and-Play PNP Devices. This will make local plug-and-play devices available. But notice the option Devices that I plug in later is also available. So, like before, additional devices added to the local computer will be available to the virtual machine later on. Once I press OK, next I need to press Connect to connect up to the virtual machine. Once I have entered in my password, I will be able to access the virtual machine's desktop. If I now open Windows Explorer on the virtual machine, you will notice that the A drive, C drive, and D drive from the Windows 8 computer are available to the virtual machine. If I were to place a USB flash drive into the local computer, that flash drive would also be available to the virtual machine. You can see that using Enhanced Session Mode makes it easy to transfer files from the local computer to the virtual machine. The next feature that I want to demonstrate is the printers. If I right-click the Start menu and select Search, I will enter in Printers and then select Devices and Printers when it appears. This will show all the printers that are available to the virtual machine. If I select one of the printers, notice that Redirected 1 is listed twice. What has happened is that I connected to the Windows 8.1 computer using a remote desktop connection. When connecting using a remote desktop connection, this created copies of the local computer's printers in the remote desktop session. When I connected to the virtual machine, the printers were copied a second time. You should start to see the similarities in how remote desktop connection works and Enhanced Session Mode works, because they use the same technology. The difference is that Enhanced Session Mode does not require a working network in order to connect to the virtual machine and share resources. At the top of the connection window, notice the icon for Basic Session. If I select this option, notice the window changes to a standard virtual machine window. This will not have access to the additional features that Enhanced Session Mode provides. If I now go back to Hyper-V Manager and select the option Hyper-V Settings, I will now select the section Enhanced Session Mode and untick the option Use Enhanced Session Mode. This changes the default of whether Basic Session or Enhanced Session Mode is used. If I now press OK, the setting will be saved. Notice that if I right-click the virtual machine and select Connect, this time the virtual connection window will connect using a basic session. If I press the Enhanced Session icon, this will connect to the virtual machine using Enhanced Session Mode, which takes advantage of the new features that mode offers. It is up to the administrator to decide if they want to use the default to select the virtual machine using Enhanced Session Mode or use a basic session. I hope you have found this video from ITFreeTraining on Enhanced Session Mode useful. And I hope to see you in the other videos from this course and other courses. Until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.